Hey everybody. Over the past couple years, the catchers that I've trained have been seeing some really significant improvements, notably in the area of throwing. And this is something that I was really interested in when I caught, even though there was this whole baseball culture against being proud of throwing a player out. It was always sort of like this shameful thing, right? like don't get too happy about throwing a guy out because the real hard work is with the blocking and receiving, which is really important. Don't get me wrong, the blocking and receiving, they're really important parts of the game, but not only is throwing a runner out really valuable and increasingly valuable as you go down the the development ranks, when you get down into amateur baseball and you're playing fewer games in a season, when the games are shorter, and offense is harder to come by, it's much more valuable than it is in the MLB, to throw a runner out, especially a runner going from first base to second base. I mean, we're talking about a huge jump in the probability of that runner scoring. So it is a valuable thing, and it is a very fun thing. It's something that can have a huge psychic effect on the team that just had a runner thrown out trying to steal second base. It can help to change many amateur coaches' game plans. A lot of amateur coaches, they say, well, let's, uh, lean an elbow into a pitch. Let's try to get a walk. Let's try to hit a backside ground ball to get on first base, and then let's just run and run and run because no one knows how to hold runners and throw runners out. If you have a catcher who not only knows how to call pickoffs and teach pitchers how to hold the baseball and get down the hill, but can also throw runners out, changes that game plan. It forces amateur hitters to hit, which is a really hard thing, as a lot of us know, for amateur hitters to do. Um, so hopefully this will be helpful for you, whether you are a coach that coaches catchers, whether you're somebody who coaches but doesn't really understand catching, which is totally fine. It's such a unique position within the game that a lot of us that coach catchers got into it because we played catcher. But you certainly don't have to have played catcher to understand it. And hopefully you can pick up a couple things that I can try to impart to you here. And if you're a catcher and you're watching this, hopefully you can start to incorporate this into the things that you do. The things that I teach are very unique. I don't say that as a brag. I say that because I quite honestly had a good arm when I played, and I couldn't quite figure out how to get much better in virtually every aspect of the game. I tried really hard. I listened. I researched. I spent all the extra time in the cages and doing catching drills, talking to coaches, and nothing really clicked, to be perfectly honest. And I always thought that it was a problem with me. But as I got into coaching, I realized, especially in this small aspect of the game, the catching aspect, it was because the cues that I was getting weren't lining up with the way my body moved and with the goals that I had in mind for the game. So I started to sort of reverse engineer this. I drove across the country and was able to work with a lot of really good catching coaches for this video series that I just released on Vimeo called the Kelly Catching Center. And if you get a chance, check that out. I learned a lot from a lot of really good coaches, a lot of guys that have been in the game for a lot longer than I have. And from their philosophies, I sort of took what I already thought I knew about catching, and I pieced together some different things. And basically what I did is I came back with a to-do list. I had a lot of things that I wanted to figure out, and figuring out catcher throwing was at the top of that list. I'm going to run through this video one time for you to show you what it looks like, and then we'll sort of walk it backwards and we'll talk about the different steps. This player is the one with the mohawk, is Cam Anderson. He's a junior at Arlington High School. He's a 2019. He is one of the best catch and throw guys I've ever been around. I mean, he's putting up astonishing numbers, especially for an amateur. And this is something that to be quite honest, a lot of people didn't really believe amateur catchers could do. I started posting videos of the guys I was training this past winter in November and December, kind of starting to put their stuff out. And people said, well, put the stopwatch in the shot, make them wear all gear, have them catch off a live pitcher and do all this stuff. Oh, but it wasn't an accurate throw. Basically trying to come up with all these different reasons why something that was in front of them wasn't real. It was like if you watch the TV show Westworld, it was like the animatrons when they're presented with something that they're not supposed to engage with based on their coding. They say it doesn't look like anything to me. I had former MLB players and college coaches and people who run showcase organizations texting me and messaging me and saying, oh, well, that's not allowed. He's not supposed to be able to go that fast. That's not real. That's fake somehow. And I'd sort of press them on it, and they couldn't quite figure out why. Well, the reason why is because we've been so force-fed with this idea that 2.0 is the number for catcher throwing to second base. We don't know much about catching. It's sort of like a desert with catching instruction, trying to figure out how we train it, how to evaluate all these different things. So basically we have this nice round number of 2.0, and if you get too far underneath it, then it seems to be something that's just not possible because we've been fed for so long. But we've also been fed these mechanics for so long, these go slow, make sure, at every point in your movement you should be able to stop and comfortably sit there. That's not the way really impressive athletic movements in any sport happen. You shouldn't be in comfortable positions. But we've been asking our catchers to do this for so long. And I think in a lot of ways, because catchers have typically had a certain body type, like the shorter, stockier guys, the position has honestly sucked so much. I can't count how many times I got hit with foul balls, from a decade back there. You get hit in the cup all the time, you take balls in the neck. It's a brutal position in a lot of ways, so it's almost like we've given catchers a pass on their athletic ability to say, well, you don't have to move that fast, let's sort of lower the bar for you, which I think is sort of unfair to catchers. Some of the best athletes I know are catchers. I get the pleasure of training catchers today that are really, really athletic, way more athletic than corner infielders that I see. Corner outfielders. Especially guys like Cam, as you'll see, he moves like an infielder because he's a converted infielder. And I think that the more that we can train this stuff with catchers, the more converted infielders and converted outfielders we'll start to see coming down to the plate, because all this stuff is really unique to catcher, and so it seems like it's really difficult to figure out, but honestly it's not. It's just not. We can train this stuff. So here's Cam Anderson. He's a junior in high school. He's throwing a 1.76 on the bag. We'll run it back and we'll put the stopwatch in the shot later on too. Here you go. Okay, so it's pretty good, right? Smooth. That's the core of what I try to impart to the players that I train. You're just trying to be smooth. You're trying to be rhythmic. Infielders are rhythmic, outfielders are rhythmic when they throw. Quarterbacks are rhythmic. Every throwing position that's not, pitching. Pitching's kind of a different thing. Although you are working with a rhythm, but you kind of are also in charge of the clock, so it's kind of a different thing. We're working on developing really clean rhythm. It starts from the bottom up. So as the pitch is on its way in, I want you to watch what Cam does with his legs, particularly with his left leg. So he pushes down, right? See that movement there? He's getting underneath the baseball. He's pushing into the ground. He's shifting his weight from the middle of his, if you take a look at his left cleat there, the middle of his foot, a little bit more up to the ball of his foot, because he is getting himself ready to put all of his weight onto his left leg at the end of his throwing process. What he's trying to do is he's trying to release the weight off of his right leg to put it on his left leg so he can take a really short step with his right leg. He's kind of freeing up his right leg at the beginning. And then as soon as he gets that right leg down, he wants to have all of his weight on his right leg and transfer it back to his left leg. So it's a very quick 1-2 sort of movement. It's sort of like a single leg squat with one leg and then the other leg, and then the ball's out. One of the things that I teach the guys that I train with catcher throwing is I teach them to try to operate on a 1-2 rhythm. That being this movement, it's all getting ready to bounce. But as that ball comes in, he wants to have his right foot in the ground as soon as the ball hits his glove, and then he wants to have his left foot in the ground at virtually the same time the ball is coming out of his hand. That is efficient mechanic right there. So the left leg goes down, he's pushing into the ground, he's trying to drive force down so he can use it a little bit better so he's not standing up and losing it all, right? If you also look at what his glove does, his glove goes from here and it goes down. What he's trying to do here is he's trying to create basically a straight line from the the left leg up to the right shoulder. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to get his glove underneath and on the outside of that ball when it comes in, so he can transfer as he's already moving toward his right shoulder. He's not trying to waste any time by lifting his glove up and then as the ball comes in, going down to get it, bringing it back up and going to his shoulder. He's trying to make it one smooth movement. It's very easy to accomplish this. You just have to get comfortable with hearing the runner moving and dropping your glove down. That's it. I mean, all this stuff sounds so easy. Of course, it's a million times harder to actually do and do consistently, but this is something that's been really successful for the guys that I've trained. As that ball comes in, let's see what he does with his right foot there. So at glove contact right there, if you look where his right foot is, his right toe is in the ground. That's the start of the 1-2 timing. That is one right there. Something else that you'll see that he did is he turned his left shoulder. He turns his upper body as the ball comes in. You see this turn. As he's coming up to the ball, he's also turning with the baseball. He's throwing out of his right shoulder. Every catcher, that we see past like the Little League level throws with their right hand, right? So if you want the baseball to come out of that right shoulder, you should be trying to position your body so that when the baseball comes in, it's going straight to that place. That makes sense, right? So something that guys are having trouble with, I think, is they're seeing MLB players doing sort of the swing out. They swing out into the left-handed or into the right-handed batter's box when there's a lefty up. And I think they're kind of getting wrong why those guys are doing it. Those guys are doing it primarily so they can make this turn with their upper body, and they don't have nearly as much reaction time, off of a 100-mile-an-hour pitch that's moving the way MLB pitchers can move a baseball versus, like this little BP toss we're getting, or a high school or a college pitcher. So I think that we're seeing the right things. It's good that young catchers are noticing this stuff. Of course, it's great that they're watching the game, but they're not quite getting right what's going on there. So as he comes up to the baseball, he's turning with it. The glove starts down. When he recognizes it being up, he makes sure that he's staying underneath it. See, all of this is rising to the baseball, right? If the pitch were lower, he wouldn't be rising as high. That's just efficiency. He's going up to the baseball, he's getting the right foot down, and now we've got the one accomplished of the 1-2 rhythm. You can see that the ball doesn't spend a lot of time in the glove. There's no squeeze with his glove. He's basically just corralling the baseball. He's moving the baseball. He's moving the baseball the way that infielders move the baseball. I live in Seattle, and Cam lives in the Seattle area. A lot of guys that I train have the pleasure of being able to watch Gene Segura, but especially Robinson Cano, play middle infield for us. And if you just watch the way that Robbie moves the baseball, you can start to understand how you can do the same thing behind the plate. And this is something that, I mean, Cam has played infield his whole life, so he understands this. It's really easy for him to get the baseball from his glove into his hand. So, baseball's in his hand there. He's starting to open this hip just a little bit. He's stretching it out. He's getting ready to turn that left foot. As he's doing that, he's plenty closed off. He's created enough of a stretch to create tension there. Something that I try to impart to the guys that I train is you don't need to turn toward first base nearly as much as you think you do. The big thing for catchers that I see is posture. Guys just throw out of weird positions because it's a really unique movement pattern, and they just don't practice it enough, honestly. And when they do practice it, they get weird cues. They get really frustrated with the feedback they get. If you have a young kid that you want to turn to a catcher, if your son is 10 years old and he says, "Dad, I want to catch," whatever it is, if you're trying to convert somebody from a different position to catcher, I would say don't start with throwing all the way to the bases. Start with just having them throw into nets 5 feet away from them, so they don't get all messed up with the negative feedback of throwing the baseball away, of spiking the baseball, of airmailing the baseball. This is a really complicated movement pattern, and it's really easy to get discouraged. I mean, we know that about the game, but especially with this catching stuff, it's really easy to get discouraged. So something that he's figured out from a lot of that really intense sort of short distance work is that he can not necessarily turn away from second base, that he basically just needs to start moving towards second, and his body's going to naturally turn away and then come back with enough force to be able to get the baseball to second base. So let's watch what he does here. That left foot, he rotates it open when he lands, and then he starts to pull the left elbow down. Obviously, he did a really good job with his arm circle here. A lot of times what I do is when I'm working with young kids, I just tell them, hey, imagine that you're standing in a pool and the water's up to your belly button, and you have one rule, and it's don't get the ball wet, right? So they instinctively start with their glove a little bit lower, and they take the baseball out and they take it straight up to their arm. It's an easy little cue for you to use. So it's a nice tight arm circle. He pulls the glove down. It's that positive disconnection that people like to talk about now. I think he could do a little bit better job to get that left elbow further down to the hip to really pull that ball down. But with how quickly he's moving, this is perfectly fine. You can see him finish here, and you can see that this knee, if you will look at the left knee, it's in the sort of a flex position, and then he yanks back right there. And that movement right there, that is something that I really didn't train for a long time. I didn't really understand it until I watched more video, and especially when I started watching the Driveline videos, and we started training that one drill that they have to try to accentuate yanking that knee backwards to try to really get the hip all the way through. So that was really helpful for Cam. That was kind of like something that clicked for him this winter. And then if you look at him run all the way through, he's not off balance. He can hang out here forever, right? Something that's helpful as far as getting all the weight onto the left leg, I try to tell guys, to drive your right knee all the way through so you can reach down and slap it after you finish. That's a position that Cam's in right there. And then as you see the flight of the baseball, it's pretty true. Something that Cam's been struggling with, that a lot of guys do, is when you move really quickly, you want to get into this this circular movement pattern, into this rotational pattern. The same sort of thing that people are struggling with hitters now. Everyone's trying to use the body a little bit more, which is great. I mean, I'm totally a proponent of it. But then if you're just pulling off of the baseball, you have a one-directional swing that can only, deliver that top spin to left field or that flare down the right field line if you're a right-handed hitter. So something that's really important is to make sure that as catchers are turning and using their bodies, the more efficient turn that we're seeing here, that they're still getting their arm up. It's really easy to start turning and see that ball, see that hand start to drop down, and that baseball is going to start tailing off into right center field. And it's really difficult, honestly, to keep the baseball on a line, even if you have really great arm strength. If you're dropping that hand down at 127 feet, it's really easy for that last couple feet to have that baseball, take a little bit of a turn and end up hitting the runner, end up short hopping your middle infielder. Then you've got all this this really quick movement pattern stuff that you've been working on. You've been retraining the way that you're doing this stuff, and it's kind of all for naught, right? So let's run the thing back through here. Talking about this turn, it's a little bit of sort of a shift here. And most importantly, looking at this pattern, if you take a look at what he's doing with his posture, I think this is really, really important. A lot of guys will not make this shift from their heel onto the middle of their foot, onto the ball of their foot, and the baseball goes straight up. They never get past this point. This is the release point for a lot of guys. So it's really important that guys pull the left elbow down and through, and it's really important that they rotate forward onto that left foot just a little bit more. Cam's moving so quickly here, and he gets so many things right that he just sort of barely gets this done here. But he's done so many things right, and he's been so efficient that we're looking at 1.76 here. So I'll run it back through. You can see the whole thing here. Okay, so there's contact point. He gets the baseball out of the hand in 0.46 seconds, which is elite. If you're under 0.65, it's considered very, very good, well above average. There you go. Hope this is helpful for you. Couple easy cues to remember from it: trying to get into that 1-2 rhythm, keeping the glove down by the left knee as long as possible, trying to turn with the pitch. So as the pitch comes in, trying to turn the shoulders as the ball is coming in, because when the baseball hits from that point, you're on the clock. So you might as well use that free time as the baseball's still in the air. Trying to get your posture rolled forward onto your foot, onto your left foot, and then pulling that glove through, and hopefully getting that right knee to get all the way through so you can finish sort of in that peacock stance, that flamingo stance, on one foot onto that left leg, getting everything into that throw. There you go. That's what I got for you. Thank you for listening. Check out my website, kellycatching.com. Check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and then check out that new video series on Vimeo. It's called The Kelly Catching Center, and big shout out to everyone that was a big part of that. Jerry Weinstein of the Rockies, Tanner Swanson of the Twins, Craig Driver of the Phillies, all sorts of great pro coaches, D1 coaches, D2, D3, NAI, JUCO. A lot of great guys got involved with this thing and taught me a lot, and I'm sure will teach you a lot. So thank you. Take care.